She has to adjourn the special.
Move to adjourn the special meeting?
Need a second?
Second.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Abstain.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Okay, now we're gonna call. We did, didn't we?
Yes, we just did. Where's
We
Ed?
had our,
That's it.
Where's Ed? What happened to Ed?
Are we recording?
Did Ed think that was the end of the meeting or?
Yes, it's on. It's going now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna call the village council meeting February 14th to order.
Anton,
Go ahead.
Here.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Here.
Press,
Present.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, we were supposed to start at 5:30. I'm sorry, we ran over in the special council meeting, so we apologize for that. Next, we'll go on to minutes from the council meeting of January 10th.
Move to approve. Second.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner. Welsh.
Yes.
Next is minutes from the special council meeting of February 1st, 2023.
Move to approve?
Second.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner. Welsh.
Abstain.
Thank you. Next is pay ordinance 1270 for $633,578.66.
Move to approve. Second.
Anton,
Can I ask a question? The payment of the overrun on the road repair program isn't in the January data, is it? That was paid in February. Why did it take so long? We agreed to pay that on the January the 10th.
I needed to wait for the signed invoice from the paving company that Chris got me.
Okay, thank you. So that'll be in the next,
Yes.
right, thank you.
we had a motion and a second to approve the pay ordinance. Anton,
Yes,
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner. Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is financial statement treasurer's report. Steve?
Thank you. Good evening. The financial statements were provided to the mayor, the clerk, and the council in advance of the February council meeting. I just returned from Chicago, so I was not able to put together the report last week. I did do it this weekend.
I didn't.
Janet and Jean proofed it. I need to proof one number, which I think I typed incorrectly. But absent that, we put it on the website today at 1:30. And so the report is public. And if there's a typo, it would be my mistake and we'll fix that. I don't think that's the case, but we'll just let you know that. So January is the first part of our 2023 year. Revenue for the month was $344,000. Approximately half of that, $105,000 was real estate taxes, and the other $154,000 was municipal income taxes. You need to know that the amounts that we receive are those derived or advanced to us from the taxing authorities. The Cuyahoga County for the real estate taxes and Rita for our income taxes. So as afforded to the village, that is what we record. We're again on a cash basis, not an accrual basis, so we can only record what we receive. I raise it because the delays, I think, in some of the billings, at least in the county on the real estate taxes, impacted the village in that we received less municipal income tax revenue this January than we did in prior Januaries. We dug into that and found that that should catch up in the next several months. The real estate taxes for the year are based on the total valuation for the year, and the documentation that we received from the county is that the tax values of the village property upon which the tax is assessed was $226 million for 23, compared to $224 million in 22 and $219 million in 21. Charlie, this is why we're going to get those minutes out to you ahead of time, so you don't have to try to do the mental math here. But basically, the tax values have not changed. They've actually gone up slightly. And the advance rates, we received an estimate of what the county believes we will receive for the entire year. There are some periods where the taxes are disputed or they're not collected. Our collection rates the last 3 years have been excellent. 95% is estimated for this year, 94%, 96% in the previous 2 years. So overall, when I saw the numbers, talked to Janet and a few others and said, geez, these are really less than we have come to see. But again, it's based on a solid tax basis and a solid collection rate. So I think those should just catch up in time. The municipal income tax as well comes in from monies from RETA. And we did have a large receipt in 22 than we have had in 23. The last 4 years, our tax revenue on income tax has been 170,000 on average. This year, we are at 154,000. So not markedly off 10% roughly from the average. But again, 22 was a larger number. So we're watching those, no items of concern at this point. We're early in the year. We're a cash receipts recorder, and we're dependent on those two government agencies to forward us the money that they collect on our behalf. The expenditures were $1,036,000 for 12 months, larger than normal. That includes $496,000 of transfers that we send from the general fund to other funds where those expenditures are funded by money from the general fund. So we need to plenish those accounts. That happens in January primarily, and then again later in the year. Excluding those transfers, our cash expenditures were $540,000 for the month of January. All 4 departments were generally on budget, except we had 3 categories in the service department that were higher. In 23, we spent $10,000 on salt, where we spent nothing last January. $7,000 on gas, where we spent nothing last January, and $5,000 more this January on maintenance than in the prior year. Cash balance at the end of January in the general fund was $7,120,000 compared to the beginning of the year of $7,811,000. We will. That's the general fund. Other funds, I think, the village is required to maintain other special purpose funds by statute or regulation or contract. The village had another $1.9 million in the other special purpose funds. The 23 budget, just to recall, so we are now in the 23 budget season. We have previously reviewed and approved the expenditure and the revenue budget for 23. It's worth mentioning a few highlights. We determined our compensation levels would increase by 4%, and that would be competitive. And so we are spending at that level. We've developed a balanced budget of roughly $6,150,000 of revenue and $6,132,000 of expenditures. I typed those numbers wrong when I said there's a possible mistake. It's that I may have typed those incorrectly. I'll check on that. We've increased our expenditures on roads to accomplish the road program over a 6-year program, with this being year 2. And we're expecting to tackle the Mayfield Road culvert replacement at a cost of about $500,000 this year as well. The long-range financial schedules that we developed in the late 2020 have been updated for the 5-year period 23 to 27. I have comments on those today, and we'll post the report and the numbers to the village website this week. The financial outlook for 23 and 27 is as follows. The village is in a healthy financial position. We're able to rely on steady income. We can control our costs, and if needed, we incur debt for long-term investment. We currently have no debt. This report elaborates on these topics and identifies tactical steps to consider if actual results materially differ from forecasted amounts. There are 2 projects that may require thorough evaluation and likely an investment on a multiple-year approach to funding over the next 5 years. That could include fire and EMS services and broadband or cell services. The village is required to follow government accounting standards, which calls for fund accounting to track revenues and expenses in a prescribed manner. The village maintains 24 specific funds. The general fund is the largest fund and provides the resources for many other funds. Other funds are required by statute, regulation, or contract and have their own revenue sources and or rely on general fund resources. The total funds is a mathematical total of the general fund and all of the funds, and it's presented to show a comprehensive view of the village's finances. The village has received unqualified audit reports from the state auditor for the last 4 years and presumably before that. The long-range schedules are projections and their forecasts of what is reasonably expected to occur using historical and current data as a baseline and making assumptions about future occurrences. Actual results will differ, and those differences can be material. Our overall approach and assumptions: the village will approach each year with a balanced budget mentality regarding recurring revenues in its 4 operating departments. We'll continue to implement the road program over a 6-year period. We'll compensate its employees within the range of neighboring and comparable communities, and will evaluate long-term issues by an early evaluation of possible solutions and associated funding. The village will not defer issues down the road, which would require a large catch-up expenditure or deteriorated infrastructure, equipment, or services. The numbers, the schedules show the village will start 2023, which it has, with 7.2 million of general fund cash. We'll receive over the next 5 years $32.1 million, and will spend $32.1 million. Therefore, we'll end the 5-year period with approximately, again, $7,300,000. The revenue in each year averages 6.4 million, and the expenditures are near the same amount. At the end of 27, the road program will have been completed over the 6-year period. The village will have sufficient funds through this 5-year horizon, and at the end of 27 to tackle long-term investments required by fire EMS or improvements to broadband and cell. Further, the road program being complete, the $1.1 million annual cost will be reduced significantly. The village has no debt and anticipates no need to borrow in the next 5 years unless required by fire EMS, broadband, cell, or other investments. On the revenue side, our revenues are expected to rise slightly over the next 5 years. 4 new homes were forecasted each year, reflecting the historical experience of several new homes. Levies are forecasted to be renewed, with no new operating levies included. Municipal income taxes have been forecasted at 2.6 million in 23, a figure that is less than 85% of the 22 actual income number. The 15% reduction, actually it's no more than 15%, reflects the uncertainty about the permanent level of work from home workers working in the village versus their employers. In 24 to 27, we then increased that number by 2.5% from the reduced base. Traffic enforcement camera income is forecasted at 25,000 per month for 8 months this year, 30,000 per month in 24, and increasing 3% thereafter. The village has the following steps to take should it need to raise additional revenue or alternative revenue if the actual results materially differ from those results. First of all, we have excess cash. Secondly, we can increase fines, permits, and rents. We could also reduce the tax credit that's currently allowed. We could propose new rather than renewal levies. We could propose specific purpose levies, or we can increase the municipal income tax. At this point, none of those items would seem to be short-term needs that we have. Expenditures: the village expects our costs to rise in line with the expected 10-year long-term inflation rate as published by the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland of 2.45%. The horizon for 24 to 27 in the model is 2.8, 2.6, 2.5, and 2.5 respectively. Those percentages increases are built into the village forecast model. For 23, we've used the approved budget figures. Inflation for the Federal Reserve from the Federal Reserve Bank from 23 is expected at 3.2% for Cleveland, and serves as a reasonable double check on the roughly 4% increase in personal wages and benefits in the budget. The forecast tackles the road program over 6 years, as I mentioned previously. The forecast also tackles in 23 the deferred stormwater management program, the Mayfield Road culvert replacement of somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. Funding is from the ARPA grant, $220,000. The village, that was the county's share of their grant given to us. The village's ARPA grant of $161,000 and land conservation levy of about $68,000. Tackling this in 23 eliminates one of the largest deferred projects that we've had in the village. The state of Ohio has been contacted over the years. They are not funding stormwater management projects. Coming to a near end here, we have other steps to take should we need to reduce costs if the actual results are materially different. We can stretch the road program up beyond the 6 years. We can reduce compensation increases and tighten up the benefits. We can reduce service levels of what we currently provide to villagers. We could delay the replacement of capital equipment. I don't foresee us doing any of those at this time. The forecast does not include broadband cell improvements. In 23, the village expects to hire an independent consultant to identify the service needs, potential solutions, and providers of funding sources. As those elements are developed, they may need to be worked into a financial plan for the village and the villagers. Further, the forecast includes EMS services being outsourced beyond the 23 contract and modest capital needs for the fire department. The 23 EMS cost figures are based on average runs and the contracted cost per run developed with the fire chief. It is not known what options or providers may bid on a new contract starting in 24. Further, the fire department expects to need a new fire engine in 27 at a cost of $800,000. This cost has not been included as a full range of options should be explored and may include a different method of providing those services. Finally, the 2020 long-range plan. In 2020, the village undertook a study of its long-term financial condition. Financial schedules pointed to a long-range shortfall or a deficit, but the report did not articulate that conclusion. Those schedules became moot when the village received large non-recurring tax receipts and the village ended 2020 with a surplus. As a result, this scenario created a fair amount of confusion in the village as to its operating condition. Since then, several items have occurred that put the village in a stronger position. The village taxpayer base has changed dramatically to include work from home and a more subtle shift in taxpayers moving into the village, paying more than departing taxpayers. This has contributed to over 1 million in revenue beyond the traditional base of 1.8 million. Further, the village's largest expenditure is beyond personnel, its capital needs for equipment and roads and expenditures, and such expenditures have been documented, quantified, and worked on aggressively. This report was put together through the Budget and Finance Committee. We reviewed a draft of it at the last meeting in December. The financial schedules also were reviewed with the Budget and Finance Committee. Janet and I have updated them to include the 22 final numbers and the 23 budget numbers we already knew about. So we're going to tidy all this up and publish this on the website. I think it's important to publish it because we have not had a written report such as this. There is no written financial outlook of the village. And so you get people and villagers wondering, are we in good shape or not in good shape? And what kind of good shape are we in? And as we look forward to the comprehensive plan coming to an end and the need to elaborate and evaluate what costs and revenues might be, it's a good time to put it in writing. So I appreciate your few minutes this evening, Mayor, to read this. It'll be published again with the financial statements. And as always, if there are questions from villagers, council, or others, they can call me or write to me at treasurer@gatesmillsvillage.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was great. And I have good news for you, actually, under the mayor's report. Janet was notified today or late yesterday, I guess, that tomorrow we're receiving $869,000 to the general fund for property taxes. So they were late, but now we're good.
That's almost,
And I
it's
did all
almost as
that-
volatile as the
Yeah.
stock market. Geez.
Yeah. Make you happy, right?
Well, it proves out, yeah, I guess facts are good. Absolutely. We'll take $869,000 for sure. Charlie. One quick question. Are we taking advantage of higher interest rates on a 3-month T-bill, for example, at $7 million in cash? To the extent our securities mature, we can do that. Most of our securities are out. I think the average is 2.7 years. We get reports from Ancora every month. So we would not be able to just take all of our current securities and trade them in and reinvest at 2.7 without taking a loss. So the village's practice and its published financial statements is to hold securities to maturity. That means in periods now when interest rates are rising, the value of those securities is less than we bought them at. They eventually will mature and be paid out at their face value, but their market value is a bit underwater. So to reinvest at a higher rate, you'd have to take a loss on what you currently have and then reinvest those proceeds. It's possible, and we can do some math on that.
And effectively, that 2.7 years means roughly a third of the portfolio matures every year, so.
Right.
to Steve's
As they
point,
mature, they
as-
can reinvest.
Well, what matures, we do reinvest at higher rate, right? The question is whether you wanted to be bolder and take a look at reinvesting a bigger piece of that. You'd have to take a loss and then reinvest and hope the proceeds catch up.
One of the dilemmas, of course, is that the short-term rate is very high. It then drops off for 3-year or 5-year. So it's an inverted yield curve, which is almost always a prediction of recession. But, you know, so we could take that money and invest for 1 year, and then who knows what we're facing a year from now. So right now, it'd be nice if we could invest it all at 4% instead of 2 point whatever. So anyways.
I think we did ask Ancora to come in with some recommendations for us, didn't we?
Sure can.
We
Why don't we
did.
why don't we do that for the
So-
next finance and budget meeting?
Yeah,
Thank you, David.
thank you.
And Janet, just so the math is right, okay, we had 154,000 and Karen just said you got notice from the county of 800.
The
Six-
general fund.
Right, for the general fund from property taxes, 869,000.
So that would put us at close to $1 million, which is roughly a little bit better than half of our 105. Okay, so that's close to $1 million and our budget for the year was 2.4. So that's comforting. Thank you.
Yes, and it's February, so.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to point out that our income tax revenues projected for this year exceed our real estate tax expected revenues. That's probably the first time we've been in that position for ever.
What, income tax revenues? No, for 2021 and 2022.
I'm ignoring the perturbation in those 2 years.
Okay, well, I mean, we certainly had a one-time, but then underneath that, we
Yeah,
had
yeah.
quite a growth. So that's what we are projecting going forward.
Income taxes are exceeding real estate taxes
Yeah,
as we
right.
look
And
forward.
maybe it's the work from home, or maybe it's because we have a younger,
We don't know.
we don't know. And that'd be
Suspect
nice
so.
to know.
Too
So,
early.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say on both of these items, we're more, I hate to say it, I think we're careful to make sure we're understanding the basis for
Yeah.
where the numbers are from, rather than just accepting them and saying that that's what it is. They're both large numbers. And as I said in the
good.
report, we're $1 million on income taxes over where we've historically been, which it had been 1.7, 1.8. So it requires just some watchfulness.
Steve, to build on David's point, it seems to me Rita ought to be able to tell us, even compared to 2 years ago, how many taxpayers did we have then? Because the thinking is if a 75-year-old moves out of the village, sells their house, and a 40-year-old moves in, the 75-year-old is not paying much of any, if any, tax, because you don't tax Social Security and the like. And then the 40-year-old is. Now, I don't know, I'm not going to get into who's paying how much, but how many taxpayers?
Rita has, we've asked them in the fall for that type of information, and they said when the 22 year is complete, the taxing year, they'll be able to gather that and compare it to 21 and 20. We've been asking for comparative data from them, and they give us good data and comparative pieces.
Yeah.
So whether they would know that on February 15th, when tax returns aren't due until the end of April.
Yeah, right, no, okay. All right.
It may be
Well, good.
worth waiting 2 months for that and ask them for some of that demographic information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. In addition to receiving that property tax money, our April council meeting will be in council chambers because the art show will be in here. Just reminding everybody now. And also we've applied to the county for 2 grants going into spring. Next, clerk's report.
Just something I wanted to share, similar to what Chip brought up last month about Gates Mills Boulevard, having some increased traffic during rush hour. I noticed that Old Mill Road has the same thing going from the village west, basically during rush hour. So I got concerned that, you know, our speed cameras, for the sake of safety, seem to have kind of caused people to go in different directions. And number one, that's not great for the road program for the other routes. But I had a question and I got it answered. So we know we pay $135 if you were to go, say, 10 miles over on Mayfield Road. I wondered what the fine would be for non-camera speed. And I called Gene today and the good answer was if you go 10 miles over on Old Mill, it's $190. So that should deter people from going off of Mayfield.
Really?
Interesting.
Really?
Oh, that is very interesting.
Very good.
Thanks.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay,
Money, money, money.
yeah, wow.
Good report. Thank you.
Good report.
Next, our committee reports.
All right, so I apologize. I don't know if I can be shorter than Steve, but I might be a little longer, but I'm going to cover a few items, some that people have requested. So, but first thing I'd like to do is to say in preparation for this council meeting, as council pro tem, I've met with the mayor and with Janet to talk about ways that we can try to get the agenda out sooner and maybe even the day when we can have all content of the agenda out. I want to thank Janet and congratulate her. While the final agenda did modify a couple of times, she did get the agenda out a week in advance. The material attached came subsequently, and that's a big step. And we're just continuing to work, the mayor and Janet and I and the department heads. It's not really so much Todd's role, it's getting the information to Todd. So we're going to continue to work, but it's a goal and we made a very good first step. I thank you, Janet. I know it was some work and we're going to continue to try to work on that. I want to talk about council pro tem for a minute. So first, I do want to thank all of you on council for electing me to be council pro tem. I don't take that lightly in any way, shape, or form. On the surface, I think we all know that the defined responsibilities of the position are minimal. It is per charter only to conduct a council meeting should the mayor not be able to. That is the entire extent of the definition or role of council pro tem. But in accepting the position, I can tell you that I intend to try to add a little more substance to the role over the balance of this year. Then at the end of this year, Sandra and I are going to compare notes from her year or so being council pro tem. I think it was more than a year, and see if we have ideas to recommend to council and the mayor to perhaps refine the responsibilities or at least the expectations of the role. I do think it puts an extreme burden on the mayor. I think there is something that the council pro tem can do, but we'd have to decide that. So that's the goal by the end of this year. I do want to make perfectly clear, everybody understands that just because I have the title council pro tem, I'm just one of 7 council members. It doesn't have any more authority or any more role. I'm just going to try to be that much more attentive and keep the council members engaged in addition to what the mayor does. So don't interpret that I'm viewing this as a power throne in any way, shape, or form. No way. That's not my view on things. So I also want to take the opportunity to thank Sandra first for her idea, and it actually was totally her idea to propose me for the position of council pro tem, basically for the reasons I just described, to give me a crack at it for a year, compare with her experience, and see what we might recommend. So on that basis, I thought that's a reasonable idea. But also, I want to thank Sandra for her incredible work as council pro tem over the past whatever number of months, more than a year. I have and will continue to work with Sandra very closely. And while I think I put in a lot of work to fulfill my council role, that pales in comparison to what Sandra does, both in dedication and her heart and all of the work. So personally, I thank you, Sandra. Thank you. So with that, the first committee report is an update on the comprehensive plan. Since our last council meeting, we had another advisory committee meeting on January 31st. As you might recall, last fall, we paused. We did a survey. The consultant did a survey of all of the advisory committee members as to the status, their thoughts on all of the elements of the draft plan at that point. I think there were, and the structure was, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you want to have further discussion? I think there were like 160 sub-elements of the draft plan. 23 out of 25 advisory committee members responded to the survey. The criteria that the consultant used was if any advisory committee member voiced no or wanted more discussion, if we had 4 or more on any one of those points, that we would then bring those up. Anything less, she viewed as having consensus. I don't have the exact number, but she said a huge majority of those 160 points, there was consensus. So what we've been embarking on in the January meeting and in the meeting early January and last on the 31st were to start to dig in further to specific elements. We have our next meeting on Tuesday, March 7th. It will be at the Gates Mills Elementary School because this room is going to be all set for the play, for the players. And, it'll be actually nice. Many members of the advisory committee may not have actually stepped foot, or it's been a long while since they've stepped foot in the elementary school. So we're getting word out on all of that. That meeting will again be focused in this case on housing, on new housing, on development. We all know that there's lots of thoughts on that. There's certainly some strong opinions. And so we're going to see if, how far we can get on the discussion among the advisory committee members in that meeting. So after that meeting, we anticipate having certainly at least one more advisory committee meeting, a town hall meeting. We may have 2 advisory committee meetings. The consultant wants to see where she feels that things are after this next meeting. If we're only going to have one more advisory committee meeting, then after the March 7th meeting, we will schedule a town hall meeting. Probably early April. We do have the art show to have to consider. I haven't worked on those logistics at this moment, but the town hall will be early to mid-April, depending on the art show. If we're going to have 2 advisory committee meetings, then we'll have one in early April, then have the town hall meeting in presumably later April. I don't know if it would be as much as early May. Again, I don't have the art show. We haven't gotten this far yet, and then we'll have a meeting, but we're certainly going to have an advisory committee meeting after the town hall. I don't know the total makeup of the town hall, but the draft plan, obviously the goal is to have it in a position that we feel we've got, that the advisory committee and the consultant feel that they've got a reasonably close consensus on the draft plan. And to present that, I can imagine we'll have, I don't want to imagine the content. We haven't really gone through that, but it'll be a town hall meeting. I'm sure it'll be well attended. Sandra, I think at the town hall last summer, it was like 80 or 90 that attended. My guess is this one will probably maybe even be more. So, that's the rough timetable. What I want to do now is then talk about following. I've just given a time frame there. The committee will be done. The advisory committee will finish their report and will present it to council. I would think at this point, the goal would try to be, and hopefully have that for the June council meeting, maybe July, but I'm hoping the goal, and I'd like to try to set that as a goal in the timing of the previous meetings that I talked about. So the questions come up properly so that they come in, they present their advisory committee plan, the comprehensive plan to the village. So what do we do at that moment? Obviously, the very first thing we're going to do is to thank them for all of their work. And we can acknowledge receipt. Doesn't mean anything more than, well, thank you. We've obviously received it. it's been pointed out to us that we did ask for this plan and we are paying for it. So it's not like somebody just dropped by and said, hey, here's something of interest you might want to think about. We did ask for this. So in some senses, it already is going to be a plan for the village. The question is, what do we do then? Do we formally accept it? Do we formally approve it? And what do we do based on it? I'm going to turn it over to the law director to give a little more clarity to that. He is going to, I think, recommend to us that we will vote on it. I don't think it's binding per se, but then again, it will be a record and it does serve as a guide. So Todd, do you want to help further explain?
Yeah, I've been involved in comprehensive planning processes over my entire careers and with different communities. First of all, council is not legally required to act on it. But every community that goes through a comprehensive planning process has their council act on it, either as Chip has said, approved or simply accept it as is and set it on a shelf and then pull it off the shelf. When you're considering, for example, maybe creating a new public park, amending zoning and land use regulations to look at as a guide. Approval means perhaps something more. It assumes that you're going to have a review of it and then approve it, and reviewing it, perhaps decide to make some adjustments in it, perhaps. A formal document entitled a comp plan, at least under Ohio law, is not required in terms of putting together your zoning and land use regulations. But it is a very helpful document to make sure that your zoning and land use regulations comport with what's in the comprehensive plan. I've been involved in many legal challenges in court of local zoning regulations, usually defending the local community, but I have been on the other side challenging them. First thing that a challenger looks at is the comprehensive plan. Is this zoning regulation, land use regulation, does it comport or at least not conflict with the comprehensive plan? So it's very, very important with respect to that. So I guess with those comments, that's sort of.
All right, so I'll open this up for discussion. I did have two other points. One thing about the update in the processes, in addition to the previous meetings we've had from the early January meeting, which talked about the core objectives of the rural composition, rural character of the village. Their goals A and B, they're all out there on the website. The notes and the revised text is on the website as we speak. And I think it is very interesting, very substantive. Quite frankly, anybody that tries to claim that this comprehensive plan is a development topic and doesn't read A and B, they're 100% wrong. It's all geared to what additional steps do we need to do to ensure we preserve our rural character. And that's the backbone of the whole plan. This is not a development plan. It's all, the principles has always been objective A and B is how to address maintaining or enhancing our rural character. So the permutations and implications of that, if we were to accept what the current draft is, I think would be very far reaching, and we'll all decide, what we all do for that. But if you haven't had a chance to read section or goal A and goal B, I encourage you to do that. So there was a question raised on where are we on the budget with the consultant. The contracted amount was $57,000. Last year, we had some overruns. Those were already paid against the $57,000. I'm not exactly sure how much we've been billed so far, but and one of the reasons is that we haven't received a new bill in a while. We've asked the consultant for a bill, not quite sure what the hangup is. So I can't give you a more up-to-date number whether we'll be on budget or not for the 57,000. So don't have more of a status than that. We are basically working through, I think if we did have 2 more advisory committee meetings, that would be 1 more than was in the scope of work. On the other hand, we're not doing another neighborhoods. We did the neighborhoods once. We're not going to do that again. So I don't know how that would balance out. So with that, I think people had some questions or something else on comprehensive plan. So I'll throw it up for discussion, questions, whatever.
I guess I'll make one comment. It seems to me, it's when they deliver the plan to council, it's unlikely that we'll either accept it completely in whole or reject it completely in whole. Seems to me it's much more likely there'll be some parts we like better than others, and there'll have to be some kind of a mechanism for amending it or somehow adjusting it.
So I've thought about that. I agree with your question, Michael, because I can't imagine this whole council is going to say, oh yeah, this is all great and we accept every word on every page. And that gets to me back to what's binding, what's not binding. Do we just accept it? Do we then do nothing? Do we take a section and say, yeah, we really like this, let's do more, and we formally approve that and we never comment on the other? I don't know what it means if we never do another thing, but just say, we thank you very much and we accept this plan. I mean, I don't know what accept means. So I'm hearing him, I understand, but I don't have my own totally clear sense. You want to comment?
I think it's something that you act upon the things that you like in the plan, but it doesn't mean you act upon all the things that are in the plan. Some of them are what they say is they're on the shelf. I mean, you may never use them.
And what's the implication? I mean, if we acknowledge the plan, we just, well, thank you, we acknowledge that we've received it.
Right.
And then we never did anything more than break it down and say, well, we like this and we're going to proceed on that, but we never comment on anything else. What is our obligation, or how bound are we to the rest of what's in the plan?
Well, you're not bound. You're not bound on anything in the plan. You're not bound by it. However, if you're challenged in court, it's very helpful to have consistency between the plan and your regulations. And that really, at this point, probably only goes to zoning and land use type regulations.
So let me
just make a comment too. When you think about this whole process, it started back in 2019 before COVID, and then reestablished again in 2021. When you think about, close to 700 of our villagers have touched this in some way, either through a neighborhood meeting or the survey, or attending the comprehensive meetings, being on the advisory committee. I mean, for me, I feel a great responsibility to deal, and I'm not saying anyone else doesn't, but I feel a great responsibility to respond to the recommendations that are going to come out of that plan. And when we talk about putting it on the shelf, I know we mean temporarily until there's an issue that comes up and we need to look at it. But for me, it's not quite finished yet. One of the last, I think, discussions that we're going to have hopefully will involve some priorities, what people see as priorities within these different 9 goals. And you have to look at finances too. What's any of this gonna cost? In my mind, if we were to accept it, and it's not binding, but to accept the body of the work that was presented, and then deal with each of those goals again as something comes up that we need to address, or there's opportunities. Let's say we are talking about some changes to the village center. So, before we would necessarily act on something again in the future, we'd pull that down and take a look at it and say, what were the recommendations? So we did say it's a 10-year plan, so there's not an expectation that it's going to get implemented in the first couple of months. And circumstances change, as we all know. We may get some money to do something that we didn't think we could, or vice versa, be limited in our budget. But it is a lot to digest. But I again just want to reinforce how many people have touched this and put their heart and soul into it. And at a minimum, it needs to be accepted as it's presented. It's not just the 27 members of the advisory committee, although they're really putting the work into, along with the consultant, and consolidating everything that's been, that's been given in terms of input. And after every advisory committee meeting, all of the comments and the questions that the advisory committee asks, all the emails that they send to the consultant do get reviewed and get incorporated. Now we have to review at the end to make sure that's kind of what the advisory committee anticipated. But there's been an awful lot of detail and work put into this.
One observation. I think the plan document should be very clear about priorities. What people think are the most, what the advisory committee believes, based on the evidence they've been receiving, are the highest priority actions that we need to take and what those actions might be. And a good plan tells you things you won't do, as well as things you will do. So I think there's a lot of sorting could go on amongst the advisory committee members if it were done in a way I'd like to see it, such that what came to council would be a list of prioritized actions and a list of things that we don't want to do.
Okay,
That's how-
in principle,
that's how the business plan
that sounds reasonable. On the other hand, we have hired a consultant. We're going to be dependent on the consultant. Whether it meets your standards, David, or might meet whatever mine are, I can't really opine. I can just tell you that it's already a lot of hard work. As you know, Sandra and I are trying to also facilitate that much more. And whether, I don't know how that, I hear what you're saying, certainly. I do know that one thing that some members of the advisory committee keep getting cautioned on is they might say, look, we've looked at whether to go north, south, east, or west, and we think you guys ought to go north. Now, we're not going to tell you which specific road to go on. We're not going to tell you necessarily a time frame. We just think you ought to go north instead of east. So the level of specificity is, it's going to be at a general, at a fairly high level. Because quite frankly, it's when you get into, well, I think you really ought to go out and take a left and then take a right there. And this guy said, well, I think it's better to take a right and then a left. You're just getting bogged down when everybody agrees we ought to be going north. And so that's the only caveat. It may be a little more general and up to us to kick around. I just, again, personal reactions. There's just every time I read it, it's like, whoa, these are some interesting thoughts. I don't know that I agree or disagree, but boy, there's certainly some things to think about. So, but I hear you. I'll mention this, and I think Sandra alluded to that. I don't know how that actually takes final shape, but I'll certainly address that.
My last hope is the advisory committee doesn't lose energy. I think there were 16 people at the last meeting. I think it's very important that if we're looking for a consensus opinion, that everybody contributes to that consensus.
Oh, we got everybody contributing, David.
Yeah, but I mean, going forward.
Everybody's contributing in every meeting. So whether they can personally show up, how they comment after, we checked again when we did we didn't know how many were going to respond to the checklist survey there in November, December. I was astounded that we got 23. The 24th person said, I've just got too many things and I can't get to it right now because it's not a 5-minute thing. It took a couple hours or 2 or 3 hours for many people. And then the 25th claims to want to stay involved, but didn't get around to it. So maybe we only have 24, but 23 out of the 24, 25 is, an indication of their strong interest. So, people are weighing in at various points. I find when I talk to individual members, whether they made the last meeting or not, they're tracking it, they're aware of it, they're following it. So
Good.
I think we've got very active participation. So
Good. Thank you.
And I just have a couple of comments on this. One, I think at the very least, this serves as a reference document. Anytime we're considering ordinances or changes in the village, we should be looking back at that comprehensive plan and seeing what some of the residents and a good portion of the residents had to say about those changes. And I don't know that there should be an up and down vote on every item, but I don't foresee the comprehensive plan being delivered in June and we're done in September, October. I think there's likely to be a multi-year or multi-month process of going through these things, but I think in all likelihood, everything needs a vote. I find myself as being relatively new to council and trying to understand why an ordinance was passed or why something was done, and going back to prior minutes, from 15 or 20 years ago, and there isn't a whole lot there. And so I think for the council and government 20 years from now, that's looking back on this comprehensive plan that was done 20 years prior, that there is an opinion on, well, how come nobody ever did anything with this piece of it? Or how come nobody ever looked at this? Well, actually they did, and it was voted down. So my comments on things.
Yeah, and kind of just to add to that, take it a step further. That's why it would be really helpful to understand priorities and importance, because they did a lot of work and really sifting through that for us, and getting that feedback would be really helpful. So I do
Got
think
it.
we really need.
Good.
Got
you
it.
know,
I love
to the
that.
extent- Understanding it's directional.
I got it. We have a
Okay,
call with our
perfect.
consultant on Thursday, and Sandra and I think we'll
Perfect.
definitely
Yeah.
bring that up to understand further how that, so.
Craig, you opened the door for me. I just have a funny anecdote. You talked about the comprehensive plan that was done in 2020. My husband was on that comprehensive.
Not 2020, you meant 19.
90.
1990, and he was on that comprehensive plan committee appointed by Dan Collister, and that stinker didn't tell me before. I forgot, and he didn't remind me before I agreed to co-chair. I think it was
He would have definitely told you not to do that, right?
before he told me not to do it. No, serious.
All right, next, I was asked to, if I could just give a quick status or get a quick status on the broadband committee. So I approached Ann Whitney, who is here just to observe tonight. I'm not going to call on her, but so she sent me an email that I'm going to read. The broadband committee, this is just a status update, has been interviewing consultants and staying in touch with other communities regarding their broadband plans. We have also attended webinars on public funds and the processes involved to apply. The committee will meet Wednesday, February 15th, that's tomorrow, and try to craft a recommendation for a consultant to present to council. So I did follow that up with a conversation with Ann. Not sure if that recommendation, they'll be comfortable to present that for the March meeting or perhaps the April meeting, but that'll be fundamentally the next step. So that we can decide on, how we, get more, what we want to use the consultant for and all that. Status of the charter review. I asked Sean Riley, as the chair of that, to send me an email, and I'll hand both of these for the minutes here in just a minute. The Charter Review Committee has met twice. They've reviewed the report from Todd Hunt with a series of suggested changes to make the charter consistent with state law and internally consistent. They have also begun reviewing the charters of nearby similar cities or villages to determine if they have provisions that we might want to consider to Gates Mills. At their next meeting, they're going to begin to identify possible changes. And after discussions within the committee, their goal is to present possible changes to the council, and they think that's likely to be by late summer. So we can certainly get periodic further updates, but that one's late summer, and the consultant, which would be the next big step on broadband, will be either in March or April for us to deliberate on what we want to do there. So I think cell tower update.
Yep. Okay, cell tower. I spoke with Kathy Pop, who's at Gilmore, and Chip and I were trying to work with Verizon, and Gilmore started back up their 2019 project, and they rebid it, and it came back double the price. So they are actually on the road to getting another bid on it. It turns out they've worked with Bill Bittner, who we had worked with, who turned it over to a Steve Carr, and he does the legwork for the company that is going to actually do this, I guess, is called Host Pilot for Verizon. They're the ones that do the Verizon end of it once the tower is up. Anyway, Gilmore is in the process again with filing with the FCC because their permit, they have to refile it. The old permit went out again. And so that's kind of where that is. Looking to maybe late fall, we're not sure, but that's the hope.
The net of that then is Gilmore, it looks like they want to go ahead if they can afford it.
Well, the idea is to go ahead with it, but they got back 3 bids and they were all double the price. So they're having, somebody suggested somebody else to bid on it and that bid is pending at the moment. They're
Right.
getting it.
Because they dropped the project, we wanted to pick it up and now it looks like they're fired back up on it if they can afford it. Right.
Well, the location, it turns out, according to the Verizon people, they like the Gilmore location better than the location that we came up with.
Okay.
And if
That's why.
Gilmore's willing to do it, so.
Right.
Sure, absolutely. So, and they're ready to act for, because there's a safety issue with the school. That helped to move it up, I think, the priority, thanks to the mayor getting some powerful people to call behind the scenes and make sure they understood this is
Oh,
actually.
no, I agree.
Because you can't get cell coverage on that
I think
campus.
we
If
all
there's an
agree.
It's
emergency.
terrible. It's just terrible by us.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's a quick update on that.
I saw a Verizon tower up by Walmart there. I don't know if that was a temporary tower or what, but
I don't know, Ed.
Don't know.
looks like they were trying to fix a problem.
Next on this is Safety Committee Traffic Camera Update. Craig?
Yes, just a quick update on the traffic cameras. We've had 2 meetings with Gatso, Census, who's the vendor, and also with discussions with the court over the last 2 or 3 weeks. First Energy has been on site, and the chief can elaborate if anybody's got any questions on this. The eastbound power is there. And basically the dates we're being given right now from a potential go live date is looking to be somewhere in the June, July timeframe. I think we'll have a better idea later this week. The court is meeting with their software vendor for an RFP to basically tie into Gatso's software. So we're still waiting on that. But the good news is First Energy has kind of been out and gotten some work done, and we should have both of the camera bases in at some point, probably late April into the earlier middle part of May. That's safety cameras. A quick update on planning and zoning. We had a discussion at the planning and zoning meeting last week regarding solar panels. As I mentioned last month, we've had 2 residents that have come to planning and zoning seeking a variance to put solar panels on their roof that faces the street, which is currently prohibited in the village. I did have a discussion with 3 of the architects that are part of the ARB to get some of their input. I shared that with planning and zoning. And we also had a discussion in planning and zoning regarding whether we wanted to have any significant changes to the solar panel solar panel zoning ordinance that we have today. And the consensus out of planning and zoning was that we do not want to have any significant changes where we would permit solar panels to face the street. I think technology has changed pretty significantly over the last 10 or 12 years since that ordinance was first written. But again, the concern seems to be with the aesthetics and property values in the village. And so I just there wasn't much of consensus from planning and zoning on wanting to change that.
Craig, could I supplement or maybe turn it into a question? But since I sit on planning and zoning as well, since the short time I've been on, we've had 2 requests come in for solar panels. And it really turns out that the way the current ordinance is written, that if you need to put a solar panel on a part of your roof that can be visible from the street, that it's very hard to consider a variance, because if that house can be seen from the street, then that can be almost for any house. So it seems like it gets to be very black and white that so the question is, now remember that putting a solar panel array on your roof is a payback question. If I put 1 panel, I probably, it takes 100 years to pay it back because I don't save that much of regular electricity use, metered use. So I got to put a whole bunch. And of course, we're in a northern climate, so most of the panels have to face south. which can give rise to make it really work for them, they got to put it on parts of their south roof. And so we're really facing the dilemma. And the sense of planning and zoning is we're not going to do anything about it. So that means we're potentially telling people, no, we're not authorizing you to do that. We're not going to give you a variance. We're just telling you, no, you can come in with a new plan that doesn't have any visible from the street, but you're going to, you might come back and say, well, then it's not economically viable and it's going to be okay. So I just want to make sure council understands that that could be the outcome of this, because we've been wrestling with it. Is that fair?
Yep, that's accurate.
Greg, I have a question too. Mine relates to the traffic cams. One of the worries I had back in January was that when we put the traffic cams in on Mayfield, it might divert traffic into the village through other routes. I don't know whether that's a real fear or not, but at any rate, I was driving through Shaker near the skating club the other day, and I saw some very interesting signs. They said, only local traffic allowed. Now, that doesn't sound very legal to me, but if indeed we get diversion through the village because of the Mayfield traffic cams, we might want to think about that. I wonder if we could have the chief or yourself call up Shaker and understand why they're doing it and what the justification and rationale is.
Yeah, it sounds like a law enforcement question. I'll defer to the chief. So.
Could I make a couple of points on traffic cams? I'm looking forward to when we have the cameras working and the software may not be in place yet, so that we can measure the baseline for Mayfield Road. But in conjunction with that, I'd also like to get a baseline on Old Mill Road. And there are these rubber things you can put across the street and they measure how much traffic goes by. I think it would be very good in that same early measurement phase to have a measure on Old Mill, in order that we can at least detect the number of vehicles, if not the speed, because the number of vehicles could lead to speed problems, could lead to safety problems, could lead to road deterioration, all the rest. The points Beth made elegantly earlier on. That's the first thing. The second thing is that when these things are up and running and our software is working, I'm not sure what we're going to do. I'm not sure what the strategy is. Are we going to actually give fines to citations to everybody who exceeds 55 miles an hour, or just a few, or just the fast ones? I have no idea. And I think we'd get a good lesson if we spoke to Mayfield Village, who over the course of the last 12 months apparently raised net to them $600,000 in a year and reduced speeds by 22% on I-271, on their stretch of I-271. So I think the calibration, the measurement of the base is important, both on Mayfield Road and in my example, Old Mill Road. And I think we need to talk to somebody who's already had some experience with this stuff and see, how did you do it? How did you start off? What were you trying to achieve in the early weeks and months of the program?
I think it's worth doing a baseline on Old Mill, just with one, not with traffic cams, but just one of those rubber hose things that counts the number of cars.
Yep.
So we know if it goes up or stays around about the same.
That's the idea.
A personal comment, we got pretty strong comments from the advisory committee members about the amount of traffic that goes through our little village. So whether or not it's going to go up or down because of the traffic cameras, I still don't know that somebody would divert to go 25 miles an hour instead of 50 or 55. But I think regardless, we have a traffic issue in the center of the village that we'd like to at least understand. So I support getting some more data. I don't know what it takes, Greg, to do one.
And maybe if you're going to compare, do it now and then do it again when it
before they
starts
work.
up. So you have something to compare.
We should do it when the world knows that the cameras are there. The cameras aren't there.
Well, no, but at least we have a baseline now.
Because you got a baseline.
Yeah, but we have a
Before the cameras are there.
before the 30-day warning period.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I think it's, in the next couple of months, probably not good in a snowy winter day. So, only 4 people came through today. Yeah, because there were only 8 cars in the whole road. So,
Absolutely.
and it's just my own, again, reaction to what you're saying is what are we going to do? I think there's one measurement that we want. This is the average speed. 1 month later, this is the average speed. If we don't find anybody over 55 miles an hour, but just the concept of the cameras being live, took the average, number of people down, then maybe we're perfectly fine. And if, you know, and if it's not having much of an impact, we just keep turning the lever. But I certainly don't think,
We could figure it out for ourselves, but I think it would be good to talk to Mayfield Village. How do they do it? And did they do it right?
Our clerk's already made the observation here that we've got heavier traffic already because people think we have them. And
oh, I don't know about that.
We don't, we
Well,
haven't dated.
that's what was mentioned this afternoon.
Again, it's just inconceivable to me that somebody diverts off of Mayfield at 55 to go through the village, through stop signs and to
On a longer route.
on a longer
Let's
route.
measure
So anyways,
Right.
I agree.
A car cut
Yeah.
on Gold Mill might be interesting.
That's just,
Okay.
Too many what ifs. We need some
Yeah, we need
strong
data.
data.
anyways,
Can we move on?
discussion.
Yes, let's go to Mayfield Schools.
Mayfield
Sandra?
Schools. Mayfield School District has launched a 5-year strategic planning process that began on February 1, and it's going to extend through June. The plan is intended to be completed by the end of the school year so that they could begin to implement some of the improvements in the new school year. They hired Huron Studer Education out of Atlanta. And a lady named Wanda Creel is the facilitator. She has quite an extensive background, including being the state superintendent for the state of Georgia and being a district superintendent in different counties in Georgia. The steering committee has 30 people on it, and they are elected officials, parents, administrators, teachers, staff, students, and business leaders and alumni. From the village, Megan Perez, who's a parent, and I think the PTO leader for the elementary school is on, along with Jim Stafford, who's the co-chair of the school liaison committee, and myself. The focus is on the student experience, the employee experience, family and community experience, and organizational excellence. They had one community meeting already on February 9th. David Atten was there. They have another one coming up at the high school on March 6th. And then there'll be, a final, then they're also going to do a survey of, and I don't know, feedback survey. I don't know if it's to probably a select group of residents, but maybe they'll do it to the whole community. I'm not sure. So anyway, it's been an interesting process. I've enjoyed working with them. It's just been a couple of meetings so far, but I guess I don't learn my lessons. So I'm on the second strategic planning process.
You're an
So
expert.
I'll keep you
now.
posted.
Thank you.
I got a Mayfield question. It's not specific to the Focus Forward Mayfield, but I mean, the consultant they hired, I presume that's part of their effort to get the levy increase improved that they had in mind. I wondered if we as a council are planning to make a recommendation regarding the levy for or against at some point. It looks to me like it's an interesting levy because the levy has to be passed now to support a $20 million building program. If you don't do the building program, you don't need the levy for several more years. So it's kind of an interesting case.
I'm not sure that I agree with the premise that the strategic planning process is to influence the people's perception about the levy. And they did say that the superintendent did say that that the expenses now for improving all of the buildings are coming out of their capital fund, and it would not be the levy. But obviously, for operating expenses, et cetera, they probably will have other needs to underscore the levy. But for the building itself, and I have an email to that effect, I'd be happy to send it to you. That's coming out of capital funds. I already
You
have.
can take it right out of that presentation they gave us in, what was it, September, October, that they could defer the levy for 3 or 4 years if they didn't do the capital program. So they can paint it, they can spin it whichever they want, but the numbers are the numbers.
Okay, so what I don't understand. What's your point? I don't.
My point is, I just asked the question, are we as a council going to make a recommendation, not now, but later, for or against the levy, or are we just going to stay out of it and leave it to the voters to decide?
I don't think we've ever gone out for or against one of the school levies that I know of.
Or could we?
I don't think we've ever done that.
Oh, yeah, I agree with
Used
you.
to.
I think we could if we wanted to. I don't know whether we should or we shouldn't, but
It's a
we
good,
should at least think about it.
it's a question we probably should, should think about.
Wait a
I
minute,
know
let's ask if we can do it even.
Oh, go ahead.
I believe you can, and I face this in other communities. However, you don't want to expend any funds or anything else, one way or the other with respect to any levy. You should create a political action committee separate from the village if you want to do that.
Yeah, this sounds like something for the Improvement Society or something like that.
I think it's something the council needs to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll wait to see and maybe we'll have to be discussing it. All right, we're going to move on. Next is the police department report. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Everybody should have received a copy of my monthly report. Be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Chief, in the past month or so, there's been a fair number, or a number of articles, maybe it's a few weeks ago at this point, in the Cleveland Plain Dealer about deer culling and how many communities. We all thought it was maybe one or two, and now I think the last was 35 communities have signed up for deer culling, hiring people to kill deer. Hiring people, not just letting bow hunters decide whether they want to come in. I mean, it would be a concerted effort. I opened that up, not tonight, but we're pretty much, past deer season. I think you do that typically maybe at a different point in time, but whether we want to think of as a village, as a council, do we want to encourage? Now, my wife may be watching this meeting, and if so, she's probably going to get in the car and come down here and shoot me rather than the deer because she's not in favor of this. So I'm not necessarily raising it because I'm in favor of it or because I'd still like to be able to go home tonight. But it has come up. A resident has asked me. It's been in the paper. A lot of communities are thinking about it. So I just throw it out there that we need to think. Why are other communities deciding to do it? I have no idea what it all means. So just.
We are part of a deer culling adventure, if you will, within the village when at Metro Parks at North Reservation. What was the date of that? It was a number of weeks ago.
It was, yes.
That they were culling within the park at the middle of the night.
So we had to give
So we kind
permission
of-
because it's technically our property or something?
It's part of us because it's in the village, but we're not doing it. The Metro Park does it within the confines of the Metro Park.
Okay. Well, anyways, I just raise it as something to mull over because it wasn't on my radar screen. So
I continue to be amazed by the number of house checks we're doing. And what I wonder about is it kind of equally spread, or is it a 10% of the village accounting for 95% of all those house checks? And if they are, maybe they should be paying for them.
Yeah, another piece to that is that I have no idea how much police time is taken with 3,919 house checks.
Per month.
Per month. I mean, it's a lot of, I can't even imagine it. And I don't know how much time it takes.
Well, it gets us down the roads, obviously. So our officers are always out there on patrol, and just about every street in the village, as the officers are patrolling the street, has houses that are on.
They go down a driveway.
And they go down the driveway wire there. That's correct. And they mix it up. They mix up the routine and whatnot.
So again, it's data that we're missing.
But we have that data. That's available to us. Yeah. Just a couple of comments. I wrote some notes down here that I heard everybody talking here, and I have just about all the answers. I think just some of the things that came up. We do have a portable speed counter. We have data from Old Mill Road from 12 of 21. We'll be doing another one here just next week. We're charging the unit up, and I have one officer who primarily is responsible for this. So he is going to collect the data for us. So our plan moving forward is such. So we are going to collect the data now. We're going to see where we're at. When these traffic cameras are installed, when we go live, we can do it again. So what we don't want to do is create a problem that may or may not exist.
No, sure.
So that's what our plan is. That's what we're hoping for. In regards to Shaker Heights, like Mr. Pressa brought up, I talked to the traffic commander down there, who I know very well. And what he told me was this: here's what they do. They have, you can't just stop vehicles. So it's not, you wouldn't know who you're stopping, so let's just say you were trying to restrict it to non-residents. Well, how would you know who's a non-resident or not? You would have to have a violation. So what they do is between the hours of 4 and 6, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., they have do not enter. And what they do is, so anybody who goes through that do not enter would be subject to a citation, whether you're a resident or not. That's what they do there. Because otherwise you just wouldn't know. Like if somebody came down Old Mill Hill, how would you know where they're going? They could be going to the post office, they could be going to Epping Road. You have to have grounds to stop that vehicle. So that's how Shaker Heights has addressed, some of the complaints from their residents.
Equal opportunity, right?
It is. So, and, so let's just say, and I'm not condoning, I'm not suggesting this. Let's say we did have a do not enter at Old Mill in Berkshire, without obviously create a problem. You can't go that way. So what would happen? They go down Berkshire or to Epping. So, we'd have to think long and hard about that. So, that's, Shaker Heights is a different community, obviously. So, that's how they're addressing it. And you can imagine and I was told some residents get, very upset, but it's, it stands for everybody. It's a legitimate violation. Everybody who goes through that sign is stopped, and a probable cause to stop that car. It's a clear violation to do not enter. Otherwise, they would know who the person is, if they live down there or not.
On a different question, could you comment on the new yellow tasers?
Yeah, so it's the same taser, just different color. And the reason for that is, if you're engaging with, somebody, let's say a suspect, and things are kind of going south, they see a yellow taser, it allows the resistor to maybe think twice about doing something. It doesn't blend in as much, it pops.
So before
So-
it was like gray or yellow.
Black.
Gray or black. or
Black.
something. Okay, all right. I thought it was a new kind of taser that.
Black.
Okay.
And just one other thing on the Old Mill traffic, and the truth is we really don't know. But I spent a lot of time out there this week, and it is actually about 1 minute longer. The alternate route is longer than if you were to go straight ahead on Mayfield Road. So if you were to go around, from Chesterland or from Mayfield Heights all the way around, take Old Mill, it's going to take about 1 minute longer.
If you obey the speed limits.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. That's
Nobody
correct.
does.
And that's if you do not, speaking on Mayfield, that's if you have green lights all the way up the hill too. So.
And I would just add one other comment on traffic. I have noticed that traffic has increased in the village, but I have also noticed that traffic seems to be increased in most places. And I think after the world effectively being closed for 3 years, people are back out and around and being called back to work. So residents in Chester and Geauga County that maybe have been working from home, maybe actually going to work now. So just a general comment.
Yeah, good comment. Or it could be more people are working from home in the village and they're going to the post office or going wherever.
Could be.
That'll conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is Service Department, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. You should have had a copy of my brief report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are we going to be holding a salt sale anytime soon for residents to
No. You
salt?
Bring
in
your
bulk?
pickup. We'll be able to load you up. You can, yeah. I think your wife volunteered your property to hold all of it.
Wonderful.
If there are no other questions.
Just to build on that, we almost had to do this about 3 or 4 years ago, Dave, you may comment, but we, rather than take what we can't store, by definition, they'll store it and there's a charge for it. Or maybe there's other options, but I know we got really close and then we got a lot of snow near the end. So, so as nice as this weather is going to be in the next few days, pray for a little more snow, so. Or we can do snow and 60 degrees. We can do salt on the road at 60 degrees, and just for the heck of it. I don't know. Anyways, it would cost us something, but. So. Is that right, Dave? I mean,
That is
we'd have to
correct.
pay for it and pay a storage is the point.
Correct. Yeah, now, we have to meet the minimum quota. We wouldn't certainly make the maximum quota and then pay for storage on that. So usually in that case, we'll buy the minimum amount we have to by contract, and then the difference of what we can take is what's left as far as paying for storage.
And then, of course, depending on what the rate would be, but the next
Correct.
year we would order a lot less. So it's
Correct.
not like it's completely wasted. It's just
Right.
we had to pay a storage charge. But
Exactly.
And then,
Exactly.
Dave, not to put you on the spot, but what's that facility hold tonnage wise?
The current bin,
Yeah,
about 1,700 tons.
okay.
whoa, our bin holds 1,700 tons?
Oh, I'm sorry, 700 tons.
That's what I
Sorry,
thought, yeah.
700 tons.
Okay.
Thinking of something else. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dave. Next is Fire Department, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of the fire department report for January, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Why there are twice as many EMS runs in month of January as last year, Chief? 19 and 9.
As far as the why, no. The-
EMS, you mean?
The EMS calls. Yeah, no, EMS. Yeah, yeah, it's just when they call for help, we go, Mayfield Village goes for EMS. It's just, we hope for it to average out. It was a very expensive month for us, and I'm hoping for slower months ahead. If there are no other questions, that concludes the fire department report.
Hey, thank you. Mayor, did you want to make a real estate comment? Okay. Okay,
At the end during council matters.
sorry.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a motion to authorize the village engineer to competitively bid the following public improvement projects for 2023.
Let me.
Yeah.
Just comment on this. This is just authorization to go out. We are, and Chris, if anybody has a question, we're going to go out for bid on the total scope that was budgeted for this year. Because first of all, we don't know what the rates might be. Once we know that, at least what Chris is going to propose would be a sequence of roads that are in the worst shape that would run the highest risk of, while we think we know what the number will be, when they get into it, they may have the same issue that we had last summer. And we would then either decide in advance, do we want to spend, or he'll just stop the third road. So that would be the way that we'll cover the risk of an overrun. We can talk about that closer to the time. So we don't have to address that at this point. We're just going out for bids on our road maintenance, separate bid on the Mayfield culvert, and a separate bid on the Hill Creek culvert repair. So these are just to get bids. So then once we know that, we'll have the next item, what we want to, whether we want to proceed.
Wasn't Hill Creek just repaired?
Emergency repair where we use steel plates to support the soil, where we had a failure adjacent to a head wall. And a part of the head wall fell apart. We now have to get in there and fix the front of the head wall.
I got it. Okay.
So we need a motion.
Close the whole road?
No.
Okay.
So unless there's other questions, I move to authorize the village engineer to competitively bid the following public improvement projects: 2023 annual road maintenance, Mayfield Road culvert, and Hill Creek culvert repair.
Two quick questions, if I may.
Yes.
We're bidding on the road program earlier this year than we have in the past.
Yes.
So what was the reason for doing it later traditionally? I mean, why are we doing it early? Just because we had an overrun last? Okay, so that's allowing you to do it earlier than would otherwise be the case.
Correct.
Great. That's
Yeah, that was last year. That, and the prior years, it's just, hey, we just didn't quite know what we wanted to do. And so this helps a lot, that whole road defined thing, that we can get there very early. So
I'll second.
We need a second. Who's second?
one other
Okay.
question, please, on one other question on the Mayfield.
Oh, I'm
culvert.
sorry.
How we fund that project is immaterial to this ordinance, right?
Correct.
Correct.
This is just an authorization to competitively bid.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank
So your questions, I think we'll certainly get to that point. That's what I was trying to
No
say.
problem.
We're trying to work with him, so with Chris, so we can give the flexibility. We know what we're trying to do or not do.
Fine.
All that. So,
you.
Beth?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Next is ordinance 2022-27. Craig.
Yes, this is an ordinance amending zoning sections 115703 and 1157 accessory uses to permit the keeping of chickens and certain other domesticated fowl as an accessory use in residential zoning districts. So for some background on this, we have had 3 readings. This has been tabled the last 2 meetings just because of full agenda items, and I wanted to make sure that residents and others had a chance to weigh in on this. We started back in the summer with a prescriptive ordinance, and then worked with some of our residents in the village to basically whittle that down into something that we came back with thinking is a pretty reasonable ordinance. And I think it's easier to start with too much and whittle things down that don't make sense and end up with something that we can all agree on. So as you think about the rural nature, the pastoral nature of the village, I think it would come as a surprise to nearly everybody in the village that those individuals that have chickens on their property today are in violation of our zoning code, period. If we had a different building official, if we had a different council, we had a different mayor, if a neighbor calls and complains, you got to get rid of the chickens. It's just the way it is, and that's news to me. I didn't realize that coming into this, that things that aren't prescribed in the zoning code are effectively prohibited. So in my opinion, a no vote on this matter effectively is council telling residents that chickens are not permitted in the village. So that's the way I look at this, and we're telling residents at your own risk, you can keep chickens on your property. So I will, one other comment, and I'll make a motion to approve this, is I think we should be consistent in the enforcement of our zoning codes. And so as I look at some of these things, and is it unreasonable for somebody to have chickens on their property when we live in a rural village? I don't think that's out of what people would expect. We've got some provisions in here, particularly one provision that gives a building official that if there is a nuisance, there is an issue, the building official has the ability and the right to order to have the chickens removed from the property. That homeowner then has recourse to go to planning and zoning to have that heard. So I feel like we've had extremely good input from residents who are very close to this, who came away supporting this ordinance. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-27.
Second.
Craig, a lot of good work done on this, and I really appreciate your involving the community and getting some good input from them. And as you said, they're now in support of this this ordinance. Having served on planning and zoning as well, I know how difficult it is when there's not when there aren't ordinances to kind of undergird the decisions that you make. And, I think this serves both people who want to have chickens as well as people who are concerned about the downside, the noise and running into the street and, having roosters visit and all that other stuff. So I think it really serves both sides. Good job. I'm definitely in support.
And I also think preserves the pastoral nature of the village by making it clear that it's permitted. Because otherwise, as you said, they're not. And then all our chickens are at risk.
I think there was good intent here, but it's so incomplete and it's so inconclusive. For example, if you want a lamb, you can't have it. it just goes on and on. I think if we're going to do something like this, we should really study it and do it completely. Dogs are not allowed in the village, for example, right now. And it should be looked at as a general law, not just specifically, you know, I've got a chicken or a rooster. So I disagree with you that we've done a good job on this. I think we've just started it.
Well, this one is specific to chickens.
Correct.
We've had a second, or no, we've had a motion and a second. Beth?
Anton?
Can I vote no with comment, please? It seems to me we've existed as a village for 200 years without an ordinance on chickens. And if we're serious about our rural character, I would hope that people would talk to each other and resolve it between themselves. So I'm going to vote no on this.
Allworder?
I'm going to vote yes, and I'd like to add a comment that I've walked all around this. At one moment, I thought, yeah, no, let's not do anything more. The dilemma for planning and zoning when somebody comes and asks, and the dilemma of realtors that call Dave Biggert a lot and said, you guys allow chickens, and he's got to do the chicken dance and dance around whether we really do or don't, because technically we don't, but we all wink at it. This one to me is a little different because we know that there are a lot of chicken owners, farmers in the village. So we're only recognizing what's already there. Now, with this in place, if somebody wants to do something that doesn't adhere to this, at least we have a framework, and it quite frankly is a lot more reasonable to then decide if there's a reasonable variance for whatever it is that they're asking. They have 0.9 acres or whatever. Whereas right now, if it technically came up and they wanted to ask if they could have chickens, the answer would be flat out no. And so I think given just chickens and all of the feedback from those that raise chickens, I don't think this raises the prospect of now, once we're doing chickens, then now we're on to goats and other, you know, domesticated farm animals. I think this is very, very well defined, and I've come around and I'm now in favor of supporting this.
Deacon?
Yes.
Press?
I think Craig did a great job in improving the ordinance from the first initial version to the final version. Much improved, good process, socializing, but I'm still a no.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Welsh?
No.
So we have an ordinance for chickens, huh?
Yes, we do. The ordinance passes. Next on the agenda is ordinance 2023-1. Craig?
Yes, this is a ordinance amending section 318.07 civil penalties to increase the civil penalty for violation for 10 to 19 miles per hour over the motor vehicle speed limit. This is for the camera program. This is on second reading. And this was all approved in December of 2021 and in January of 2022. Recall that the reason that this is being brought back in was because of the Supreme Court ruling that there is now an advanced administrative ticket charge for all of the citations that are issued, and we're increasing the first level of that fine to effectively collect those costs. This is on second reading, and I'll make a motion to suspend the rules so that we can get this squared away. And it's my expectation that we'll have the contract amendment in all likelihood at the March council meeting for approval.
For Gatso.
For Gatso, correct.
I'll second your suspension of the rules.
Anton?
Yes.
Allworder?
Yes.
Deacon?
Yes.
Press?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner? Welsh?
Yes.
And now I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-1.
Second.
Anton?
Yes.
Allworder?
Yes.
Deacon?
Yes.
Press?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Welsh?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-5, first reading. Chip?
Yeah, this is a first reading. This is this could be a really tough issue for us, whether we want to accept money from another entity. I think the mayor is actually, you always have your name on the agenda, and I didn't even realize it without focusing. I was looking at other things, so I'm going to defer to the mayor to give a little bit
About
of explanation.
$8,000 to accept from NOPEC.
Any reason why we need to make it a first reading? I mean, is there benefit to approving this now so they know to send us the money, or? I don't
It's an
know.
emergency.
It just seems like a nice thing, smart thing to do. I don't know.
Forget it.
If you want to, I will go ahead and.
Okay, so Karen, do you want to explain a little bit further what this is about?
Well, this is a grant and we usually use it for things that are energy savers. We've used it for some lights. We've used it for some insulation. We used it for fixing something up in here, crawling around. I remember with the air conditioning. What else have we used it for?
Commercial dishwasher.
Commercial dishwasher right in the kitchen, and across the street, we did something with the boiler or whatnot. So
And the
improving
tennis court lights.
and tennis courts, like energy saving, tennis court lights was last year, the LED. So this is $8,000 that this year we would put toward a energy saving project. Could be windows, which keep in the town hall is the biggest thing we have left, I think.
Yeah.
Other than the lights, but we applied for the county grant for that, so.
Could I ask a question? Are we still involved with NORPEC? We got a letter
Yes,
saying
we
that,
are.
well, they're not representing us now.
They're not representing us on electric at the moment because the prices are better out there that individuals can get. If that changes, which it probably will, then they'll be back representing us on.
Are we
electric.
still on gas then?
Yes.
Okay, there seems to be some question that our gas bills are fluctuating with different companies. Have you seen that?
No,
Okay.
Our gas bills have fluctuated. I don't know if it's different companies, but
right.
but they're sure fluctuating. They're
They
only fluctuating one
negotiate
direction.
On our behalf. When they couldn't negotiate on electric, they gave it back to us until such time as they can then negotiate on our behalf better than what you get.
Do we have to re-vote on that again or do we?
No.
Okay.
I move to suspend.
Second.
Anton.
Yes.
Allward.
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes,
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes,
thank you.
Now I move to approve ordinance 2023-5.
second.
Anton.
Yes.
Allward.
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes,
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-7. This is first reading. This is an ordinance authorizing the disposal by the sale of a vehicle that's from the unit. It's obsolete and unneeded. And for village purposes, declaring an emergency. And this is Tom's vehicle.
Any reason to suspend the rules on, I mean, if you have this authority, do you have a buyer already lined up, or does it just give you the right to go get a quote? Okay, but I mean, if
Yeah,
if you happen to get a call tomorrow and just said, hey, I just realized you got the best vehicle in the world and I'm gonna offer you, you'd have to come back to get authority from us, right? So what's the reason to? And execute. So I guess I'm just trying to understand why we wouldn't suspend the rules and give you the authority tonight to proceed. Okay, so I move to suspend the rules.
Thank you.
David, was it you?
Yes.
Anton,
Yes.
Allward.
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes,
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Now you move to approve 2023-7. I move.
Second.
What's it worth?
Anton.
What's it worth?
You want to buy it?
You might have to pay.
Yeah, I get a pretty high number there, will you?
Not a very good advertisement for it, is it?
No.
Anton,
Yes.
Allward.
Yes.
Deacon,
yes,
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
You must always remember with our vehicles, by the time it gets to the point where we're selling it, there's a lot of miles on those things. I don't care what department it
Wheels
comes
fall
from. Next is ordinance number 2023-8. This is a resolution authorizing an agreement with the law firm of Rutzel and Andrus LPA for law director and other legal services. It wasn't in the packet. Our law director sent it to everyone.
I don't hear anything from anybody else, so I guess I did a lot
So
of homework
what
on
does
this.
mean?
Pardon me?
Well,
When was
want
the
me to
last
give-
time?
No,
we
no,
did that?
okay, yeah. Go-
When
go
was the
ahead.
last time we bid out the legal services?
Uh,
Have we ever?
2016, it's not a bid, it's proposals.
Last time that we actually bid for a law firm was, we went, Chuck Real retired. And we interviewed at that point other law firms and we ended up back with, Walter Haverfield
Right.
and Margaret Cannon was the law director under Sean.
Yeah,
So
and then
suffice to say a long time ago.
prior to 2016, because I was appointed in 2016 when Margaret retired. So it was, she wasn't law director a long time.
Mm-mm.
but
No, but she was under Sean, I think, for whatever time Sean was mayor,
Part of that.
right?
Yeah, she wouldn't be right.
And we're
But
looking
the
at,
hourly rate has not increased going back to
Many.
Chuck
years,
Real
many-
in the 90s that I know of.
and
per
the
hour.
proposal on the table is for about a 40% increase in the retainer, correct?
It's a $12,000 increase.
On top of 30.
Yes.
Yeah. That's 40%, I think.
Todd, do you want to first comment on?
Yeah,
how
I
you got to-
apologize for not getting this to you earlier. I had to change firms from December, in December. My whole public law group moved from Walter Haverfield. I was there 35 years. We moved to Retzel and Andrus because they had a better platform for public law. They have the biggest public law practice in the state. And frankly, part of it was that there was a real pressure from Walter Haverfield to increase rates across the board for all public entities, not only municipalities, but public schools, et cetera. And so we went to Retzel and Andrus so that we could attempt to keep rates at a level that were acceptable to public entities. I went back and I've looked at our effective rates for our regular services for a lot of communities, including Gates Mills, and we do a lot of work for Gates Mills. Myself and my associates, particularly Lisa Mack in our office, who has 28 years worth of municipal experience. She has no thought of being a partner. She likes to work and grind. And so we did a lot of work, and our rates, our effective rates for those regular services were sometimes around $118 an hour. We just can't sustain that. I have not put a cap on the number of hours that we would put in for that 42,000. I believe that, and I know that some of the communities around here, there are caps. Moreland Hills is, I'm an assistant law director there, but my partner is the law director there. There is a cap on those services. And once the cap is hit, then it goes into a higher hourly rate. So I again apologize, this is late, and you probably read the contract. There was a retroactivity to January 1st. I'm willing to back off on that till begin this on March 1st and put in the contract the rates that we had with Walter Haverfield for the last many years.
Until the March one.
Until March 1. And we've done quite a bit of work in January and February for the village already.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. I'm very happy where we're at. We have a great platform to work from, and they're so supportive of our practice. So
Well, it's been great working with you. I've been on council, it'll be 12 years, and I know they've been you and your representatives have been with the village for many years before that. And even the work that you did recently, helping us go back and look over records from Burton Court, et cetera. I mean, you always go the extra mile. This having, and we need a law director, but this having come up kind of creates an opportunity to go out for bid.
Yeah.
So there, maybe a compromise here is that we retain you under this new agreement until we have an opportunity, as soon as council wants, to go out for bid.
Well, we have we have the ability to get out of it in 30-day notice.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there is a 30 days. Notice in here, and you can get rid of me in 30 days. So actually under the ethical rules in Ohio, you can get rid of me today if you wanted to. So. But-
When I got this yesterday, certainly a surprise. I called the mayor and just blistered her. She got it on Friday. And said, oh, we're gonna do a lot of things. Then I read the terms this afternoon and says, oh, we can get out of this in 30 days. So we have plenty of, we can go out for bid, for RFPs, starting tomorrow morning, next month, whatever. And, and I certainly would support. Some of you weren't on council at the time, but in 2020, we worked on long-range plan. And when it came to professional services, we strongly felt we ought to start, doing every periodically an RFP. We effectively did that last year on our village engineer function. If nothing had ever changed here, I think it's pretty likely we would have probably come to that realization we ought to do it this year, because certainly the law director is the other major position. I mentioned to Todd before that this probably gives rise further. I don't approach it assuming we're going to find better rates than this. I just think it's a healthy process. Personally, I'm very pleased with our law director services, and I'm very impressed with Retzel, and I've heard wonderful things about him. So I don't approach it that, oh boy, let's start the clock, because man, I want to get out of this. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I think it's prudent, but it doesn't have to be tied up with this. In the meantime, we get a law director. I don't know what the alternative is. So I don't know. That's where I come up. I didn't approach this. If this meeting had been last night, I was, we're not going to do this. And I came around to it completely. So.
Well, this is what causes inflation.
I know.
Everybody doing this at the same time.
I
is not good
understand.
For the nation.
Right, this is true.
So let's take a stand. I'm sure Todd would agree. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I agree, Chip, that we need legal counsel, and I think, thank you for the March 1. That's
Yes.
important, that it not be retro. I think that would be.
It makes a
helpful.
lot easier.
And for grandfathering the rates, so we
I will make
can't
that
go without
provision.
counsel. And with the 30 days, I think we're duly protected. So
I'd move to suspend the rules and make this effective March 1.
Second.
Anton.
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon.
yes,
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
I move to approve 2023-8.
Second.
Anton.
Could I ask a naive question? The records of your work for us, when you were with your previous firm, do they come to us? Do we own those records?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And it has all those records. Now,
Okay.
my time entries, and I bill by the
Huh?
10th of the hour.
No.
And I'm very specific as to what task was
Okay.
done.
Okay.
Those are privileged, not the hours, but the
Well-
summary of tasks. So they're all available, I would guess, Janet, if someone wants to look at them.
We haven't picked them up yet.
we haven't picked them up yet,
But they're ours.
but they're ours.
Mm.
The one,
No, the ones the invoices that I sent, the invoices.
the
Oh,
current,
invoice.
invoices, yeah.
No, I
we've
haven't
got
sent an
those.
invoice for January yet
Yeah.
because.
But our files are ours, but they haven't.
Mayor Pro-
Oh, the files, yes.
That's what I meant.
89, I think we started here in 1988. I started working here in 1989. So
And Dave, we've said we'll go pick them up.
They're
We
about
haven't heard-
30 boxes of files that you can have.
Now,
One-
can I ask a question? If we are sued on the Gatso cameras, is that covered under our umbrella with you, or is that extra?
That's extra. Litigation is extra. Yes.
So I
We
think
had a motion and a second. Anton.
Yes.
Allworder.
yes.
Deacon.
Yes,
Press. Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Welch.
Yes.
And did I hear that Mr. Atten would like to review all of those records from 1988 on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Come on, yeah, don't encourage him, okay.
well, wait till we get the boxes. Okay, next is council matters. Craig?
Yes, so there will be a special council meeting this Friday to approve a lease for a coffee shop in the space formerly occupied by Cindy Halley. There will be coffee, pastries, prepared salads, sandwiches and soup. They will be open 6 a.m. until 3 p.m. And frankly, this is exciting news for the village. Some of the feedback that we've gotten back from the comprehensive plan process has been that that's something that villagers have been actively looking for and seeking. So we look forward to that. And frankly, the reason for the special meeting is to allow sufficient time for the build out of the space. They'd like to be open as soon as possible, and to effectively have to wait until the March meeting to approve all of this just adds more time to this. So this is being done in conjunction with SARS. We're again very excited about the news and the announcement on this. I know Chip has done a lot of work on this, and it'll be, is it 8 a.m. on Friday? This Friday is the special council meeting.
That's the time we
Approve that.
decided on, 8 a.m.
Correct.
Council
In
chambers.
Council chambers.
This
This
17th.
Friday.
Obviously, that's the goal. We do have to work through one possible revision in the morning, and I'm hoping to wrap that up. So if not, then we'll push that out, and but notice will go up tomorrow morning, and hopefully the lease will be out for public review by the end of the day tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
On council matters, I know that I said, at least I think I said it in the last meeting. I know I've said it to each of you individually that I've given thought to maybe trying to prioritize some of the things that we as council ought to think about. What in addition to all the day-to-day, or all the month-to-month stuff that we deal with and all of that, and the committees that are already underway, are there some things that we ought to think about? And I'm not going to suggest that this is going to be one of them, but one that certainly could be on the list that we would talk about is tree canopy. It's certainly coming up. It's coming up in the comprehensive plan. I think I've heard it when we talked with the Land Conservancy. We've all given thought to it. And so an example might be, would that be one of the things that we as a council would like to, in the course of 2023, by the end of the year or sooner if possible, have a much clearer sense of what would it take for the village to have a long-range plan to try to improve or address the dwindling tree canopy and try to slow the erosion and hopefully reverse it. I have no idea what that means. So I can imagine, a committee and all of that. I'm not advocating, I'm not bringing that up at this moment. I'm just using that as an example. So I asked each of you to send me a list of 3 to 5 items. I apologize. I did manage to take a few days of R&R. I put in a whole lot of hours on these whole lease situations and obviously the comprehensive plan. So I haven't digested it all. In fact, I'm going to have to talk to the law director, but what I'm planning to do is just put together the list. There was some overlap from various members or maybe something close. But the list is actually pretty long. It's not 3 to 5, I can assure you, because each one of you had 3 to 5 and you don't all think exactly the same. Now, that may be a shock to you guys that you don't all think the same, but so I'm thinking that I might then put the whole list together, ask each of you to try to, what would be your top 3 off of this list and see if that helps us to narrow down. I'm not taking a vote, but then to just come back with those results. And my problem is I don't think I'll be here for the March council meeting. We're scheduled to head south for a little while. So it might not be till April, but so I didn't want to think I've dropped it. I thank you all for your input. Lots of interesting thoughts there. And I just apologize that I'm not in position to do more at this moment. So
You're doing it.
it's only my second meeting. Well, yeah, I would. Yes. All right. So that was my council matter.
I have one council matter. The Charter Review Committee, I don't feel that it's moving very quickly. But I think bear in mind the schedule for the coming election in November. And if we are going to have some charter changes that would have to go to the voters, it would be good to synchronizing the work of the committee with the election schedule for this year. So, and I don't feel that that's the speed that's going at. I think it does its work more quickly. And if we want to change this charter, we have to do it. We could do it this year rather than wait.
Well, I think they said they were looking at it for June. Isn't that what it is?
And I don't know. I mean, what I reported from Sean was later this, and
Later
later
this
this summer. And, I
We'll have to ask the question.
think it's a very
can't answer
legitimate
that,
question.
But I know that it would have, whatever it would have to be on the ballot, the
Right, by
beginning, of- or, I mean, posted for the beginning of August. if I
August
Probably.
remember it.
So that's a
It-
July.
It is fair to
The
say
charter, it's
the
got to be.
committee's moved very slowly. I mean,
Okay.
we set it up about a year ago. And there've been 2 meetings.
Uh, I'll work with you.
We'll ask them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other council matters? Business from the audience?
He's still awake?
Closer.
Thank you. Okay, we need.
Move to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh.
Yes.